All right, diving in today, and we're looking at this idea of waiting.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, and it's sparked by uh, this book you sent over, The Camino Within by Tarek Ryan.
Mhm.
Specifically, the chapter Stop Waiting.
Right, yeah. I thought this would be a good one for us, always talking about making the most of time, learning efficiently, and this idea of waiting, or rather not waiting, felt pretty relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So for anyone tuning in, basically this chapter is all about Ryman's, his experience on the Camino de Santiago and how it kind of shifted his whole perspective on, well, how much time we all spend just waiting around.
And that shift, right, that's what we're really digging into, going from sort of idly waiting for things to happen to really taking charge, being proactive. I'm curious to see as we unpack this, what we can each take away from it, especially as it relates to how we approach learning, managing our time.
Absolutely. So jumping right in, one of the first things that struck me is how Ryman kind of tackles this old saying, good things come to those who wait.
Oh yeah.
He actually says he believed that, like
Yeah.
for 27 years. But now he's come to this whole other view. Good things come to those who act and are consistent with their efforts. It's a pretty huge change, wouldn't you say?
It is. It is. And I think it points to this really important distinction between, like you said, passively expecting something to happen versus actively shaping your reality.
Right.
And what I find so interesting is how he arrived at this new perspective. It was through his observations during the Camino. He talks about seeing people constantly waiting for breakfast at the hostels, for the bus to the next town, for the snow to stop so they could continue walking. These are things we all experience, right? This waiting.
Oh, yeah, totally. I can picture those moments so clearly,
Yeah,
just feeling stuck, impatient.
absolutely.
And for Raymond, it was actually one of those moments waiting for a bus in the snow that kind of became a turning point. He realized he didn't want to just wait for things to happen in his life anymore, whether it was a pay raise, a vacation, whatever. It was about taking control.
And that's such a key takeaway, right? Not just waiting for life to come to you, but actively shaping it. And he actually uses this really great example to illustrate this shift. He talks about meeting this couple from New Zealand on the Camino, and they were doing things a bit differently. They weren't tied to a strict itinerary. They were just enjoying each place, staying longer if they felt like it.
Huh. That's that's almost like a rebellious idea, isn't it? Not feeling this pressure to always be pushing forward, reaching the destination as quickly as possible.
Right. It's like they were consciously choosing to prioritize those moment-to-moment pleasures over rushing towards the end goal. And that's what really resonated with Remen, I think. He saw in them this embodiment of that saying, it's not the destination, but the journey. And for him, it was like an aha moment.
I love that. And it makes me think, even as we talk about learning, gaining knowledge, is it all about reaching that end point, that final understanding? Or is there value in the process itself? And to that point, I think Remen gives a really practical suggestion. He says, turn waiting time into you time.
Mm.
Be happy with what you have, where you are in this moment. It's about finding those little pockets of value in those in-between times.
Yeah, and if we kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture here, I think it comes down to this fundamental shift in mindset, moving from a place of, waiting for future fulfillment to actually embracing present reality. And I think that raises a really interesting question for anyone listening. How often do we find ourselves mentally waiting for the next piece of information, the next level of insight, instead of fully engaging with what we're taking in right now?
So just to recap, what we've been talking about here is this shift from passively waiting for good things to happen to actually creating them, and all while really valuing the present moment.
And I think that leads us to a final point to consider, a question to maybe sit with. What about those inevitable moments of waiting in our day-to-day lives? Waiting in line, waiting for a file to download, even waiting between tasks. Could those be opportunities for something more, maybe a moment of reflection, or simply just being present? How might changing our relationship with this idea of waiting change how we learn, how we interact with the world around us? It's definitely something to think about.
It really is. Well, this has been a really thought-provoking dive. Thanks for sharing this chapter with us.
My pleasure. Always a good conversation.